Hello, it's another Sunday, and this is Citi TV. As we always do, we bring you the big stories of the week through the perspective of journalists. Now, journalists are usually the storytellers, but how do they analyze the story? Of course, they have so much behind-the-scenes background. They have some information that they may not necessarily share with the public for so many other reasons that may arise. But when they come on press conference, they're able to give you an inkling into the thinking of the newsmakers. That's what we do here on press conference. I am Umaru Sanda Amadu, sitting in for Duke Mensa Opoku. Well, so it's been a week of issues, of course, an eventful week, which excites us as journalists because we get a lot of news stories to bring you. And I'm sure it excites you as well at home because we have so much to give you and you're always on edge waiting. What next? Scandal after scandal. I remember Sam George recently using a very bad coinage for the government. But that's something that excites the opposition. It gives news to the journalists. And so what are the big stories that we're bringing you tonight? First off, PDS. I'm sure you have your power. That's why you're watching us. But the company that is supposed to provide you that power at home is not out of the troubles yet. PDS, or Power Distribution Services, and the deal that brought that company about has been scrutinized. Questions have been asked, an investigation has been conducted, and now we're hearing from one set of the investigators that PDS is clear. They've not done anything, or at least there's nothing to show that they've done something wrong. But the government on the other side is saying, wait a minute, there are two sets of investigations. It's just one leg which forms a basis for the conclusion that has been released to you at the media. Someone is trying to release this information to lead the way. That's the FTI report. We will be analyzing that, plus what exactly does government know that is not sharing. That is something that we'll be discussing here on press conference. Also tonight on press conference, South Africa is back in the news for the ugly reasons. Again, xenophobia, or is it Afrophobia? They are attacking their colleague black people or black people who live in the country, South Africans, Ghanaians, Nigerians, Senegalese, Tanzanians. And Nigeria is already retaliating, and the Nigerian government sent an airplane to go pick, with the support of a private person, to pick Nigerians who were resident in South Africa. Ghanaians haven't done that yet, but we are told that 3 persons have been affected by the clashes or the attacks by the South Africans. And we've also heard that some 5 Ghanaians were arrested. We'll unpack the issues for you from the perspective of the journalists. And Nana Akufo-Addo's government is back in the news again for the bad reasons. Maybe good reasons. 3 people fired. The boss at the National Youth Authority and his 2 deputies. One is saying that he's just a whistleblower. Is he indeed? Those are the issues we have for you on press conference tonight. And to help me do justice to the issues, I have to my left Gordon Asare-Bediako. He edits the ABC newspaper, occasionally hosts Boiling Point on Oman FM, and also a panelist. Gordon, you're welcome to the press conference.
Thank you.
How is the week ending?
It's on the high.
You are a newspaper. I'm sure by now you've gone to bed already, or
no, almost. I mean, just about 1 hour left.
Charlie, the things people go through as newspapers.
You can't believe.
I'm sorry for you.
At times you sleep and you have to wake up to come and do because there's a breaking news.
I'm sorry for you.
You know, Daily Graphic has a night editor.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it used to be ABF Husseini. I don't know.
Yeah.
Who is there now?
No, I don't know, but they have a night editor. So
but you don't.
You don't.
It's 1 month throughout.
And we can't afford.
Yeah, a small newspaper.
Yes.
Dziffa Ametam is preparing to host the Breakfast Daily on Citi TV tomorrow. Dziffa, how is it coming?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
Yeah, it's good to see you on my set. And then Cecil Obodai is host of Breakfast Drive.
Unique Breakfast Drive.
Unique Breakfast Drive on Unique FM, one of GBC's big channels in the country. You're welcome, boss.
Thank you.
How is the week ending?
Well, I can't wait to welcome tomorrow.
Any agenda you're setting for tomorrow morning?
Oh, well, usually I keep it to myself until I get up and get to the studio and see what I can surprise.
Good to see you all. So, Gordon, let's start with you. FTI. They have come up with their report, and it's almost like they've cleared PDS. But government is saying, wait a minute, no, they are not completely clear. What is the missing link? What is the back story that we need to know?
Well, Sandra, let me say good evening to your cherished viewers. I think in this whole brouhaha, I'll blame the government. Last month, we were told that government was sending delegation to Qatar, Doha, to commence investigations into the whole transaction. Nowhere did we hear of FTI or whatever institution. So all of a sudden you wake up and then there is a certain report by FTI supposedly clearing PDS of any wrongdoing. Who commissioned FTI? I don't know. So media houses quoting FTI. Who commissioned FTI? And what does the FTI report really say? The government sent a delegation to Doha. I've seen a report dated 9th August 2019, which doesn't clear PDS. So I'm wondering why the government will sit down for a certain report to pop up in the media, for the government to come out and say, this is not the actual report, and we disagree with the report. Fine, you can disagree with the report, but where is the report that you commission people to go to Doha to go and investigate? Where is that report?
Your own report.
Your own report, which for me, we must go with your own report. Where is that report? That is what they should let us know, because the report by that team indicts PDS. That is what it says.
That's what you know?
That's what I know. That's what I've read. It indicts PDS. And based on that report dated 9th August, the PDS agreement with EC, the concession, is null and void based on a lot of issues. And so I would have expected that government would straight away, because government gave us 30-day ultimatum that within 30 days, they should have finished with whatever investigation they were supposed to do. I'm sure 30 days had elapsed already. Where is the official statement from government? If government doesn't say what is there, somebody will fill the vacuum for government.
And that's what has happened.
And that is what has happened. So if anybody is misinforming the public, government must take the blame. Because if commission people, they've traveled from Accra to Doha, Qatar.
Another group went to the US.
Another group went to the US. They've completed their report. So tell us that we have compiled the investigative report from US group and then the Doha group. This is what we have seen. The way forward is that we are forwarding both reports to the Office of the Attorney General, because certainly it has legal ramifications. Because you cannot just get up and say the contract was based on fraud or whatever, and so you are abrogating the contract just like that. You may have to weigh the options through the Office of the Attorney General. So the reports are ready. This is the report that we have so far. We are sending it to the Office of the Attorney General. Then you say, okay, then we are waiting on the Attorney General. But you don't say anything. And then FTI report pops out from nowhere, and then you are coming to say we disagree with the report. Okay, where is the report that which you agree with?
But FTI did not just pop out from nowhere. FTI is the other leg from the US. So there are two investigations that were ongoing. The MEDA championing the one in the US, and which has come out to clear PDS. And then the Qatari version. In fact, Wokojo Ponkroma Information Minister said to me on Eyewitness News that they're going to put the two together to come up with a concrete report. So this is just one part of a whole that has been leaked to the media. And he said that
why is the other leg?
They are still working on it.
The other leg is with government.
Yes.
So they should release it for the public to know. If not, government will look bad. Sanda, let me tell you, nobody from anywhere triggered this investigation. It was an investigation triggered by the government itself. In fact, we were there. If you follow me on Facebook, I heard something I put on my Facebook about 6:37 p.m. That's PDS, interesting times ahead. Around 9 p.m. misinformation announced it. So I realized that yes, government at this time, because of something that they call continuous due diligence or something, they have seen something which had gone amiss. So they said, let us correct it. So government should be given a pat at the shoulder, but because of what is happening now, government cannot be commended.
They've caused their own mess and they're unable to untangle themselves.
Yes, you've caused it. You've seen it. It's never too late to do the good thing. But since we sent a delegation to US and Qatar, where is the report? Okay, this is what they found in US. This is what they found in Qatar. We are going to marry both reports and then come out with a bold decision. then we say, okay, fine, we are waiting on you. But they've gone and come back, you are not saying anything. And then you go and say, we disagree with this one. Where is the report for Ghanaians also to agree with you?
Let me bring in Dziffa. Dziffa, so we are none the wiser, are we? After 1 month of waiting for the government to give us a true report, and now this FTI report and the challenge from the government side that, well, this cannot entirely be true. But for critics and opponents of the government, another institution has been cleared.
But I think for the general Ghanaian public, because when I'm listening to all these things from a perspective of a Ghanaian citizen, what was the initial reason why we even engaged the U.S. government in the first place? We wanted to have a stable source of energy to contribute to our development as a nation. But yet again, we are distracted with all these politics. Right? If this organization, FTI, MEDA, whomever, U.S. government, they've done their neutral investigations, they found that PDS isn't a fraudulent agency as the way that perhaps the energy minister claimed. What is the result of the investigations by government? Why haven't we heard it? Why is it that every time something goes wrong, we take forever, we overcomplicate things that are not supposed to be complicated? It's actually shameful that we'll find the independent bodies' results, be it leaked or not, before we hear from our own government. The government should be speaking first. They should be telling us, okay, the energy minister said this. From our investigations, this is what we have found out. PDS was supposed to be a good thing for us. It's supposed to be locally led, great partnership between local businesses and some foreign agencies. We were supposed to show that, hey, this is what Ghana can do, the rest of Africa can replicate it if we want to collaborate with the U.S. government. Now the whole thing has been muddied with politics. Someone saying you are following the imperialistic ways, you are doing this, you are doing that. At the end of the day, we all want to see an industrialized nation. Energy is a big part of it. Why can't we clean up the sector to a point where we can finally say we have it figured out? And I don't doubt their findings, right? And if the information minister has something else to counter it, release it already. Why is it taking you so long to do investigations to tell us what is happening? What's the way forward? If PDS is wrong, how do we ensure we don't get here again? Who didn't do their due diligence in the first place? As at getting to the 1st of August, all we knew was we were going to go from take and pay to take or pay, whatever the case, take or pay to take and pay. Then July 30th, we hear PDS is connected to some fraudulent act, and we're like, wait, hold on. Is this connected to the cleanup of the sector? Is this something different? Who did not do their job in the first place? Now the conversation has turned into, are they fraudulent or are they not? And if we're saying that this isn't the full story, what is the full story? Whose job was it to ensure that we don't sign any contract with a company that has not crossed its T's and dotted its I's? Are we holding this person accountable? If we are not, why aren't we? And are we also just passively participating in our own underdevelopment? Because on the grand scheme of things, the entire nation was supposed to benefit from this.
Cecil, so we've seen governments commission committees or commissions, and the reports, most of the times we don't get to see them. Sometimes we do see them. And now we are told that it's going to take 1 month to do this investigation. The 1 month elapsed, but at the time we were told the president was in Japan and that we're supposed to wait for him to return. And he's been back. Nothing happened. And then someone decides to go to town with another report. Do you blame them?
Well, let me say good evening to our viewers. I will share in the concerns of Dziffa and my brother Godwin, what all of them have said, and maybe add a few of my concerns. To say that there's so much controversy surrounding this whole PDS deal. And I think we must begin to look at it from another perspective. Either government will decide for now to say that, well, let's put a hold on this whole thing and see how we can harmonize all the various investigative pieces. Because as we speak, we know of the FTI report that both of them have talked about. We are aware of government investigative body that was put in place for 30 days to come up with a report. And that report in itself puts out some contradictory comments vis-a-vis what the FTI report is about. And clearly, it tells you that, look, there are concerns. My other concern also is got to do with what minority has talked about. And I'm sure you're aware of their press conference to Tuesday. Suggest that there should be a bipartisan inquiry into this whole thing, because reports they have received from both government and FTI suggest that there are some infractions, there are some inaccuracies, there are some reasons why this whole thing should be looked at again. The other thing I would want to put across has got to do with a very key member of the party, for that matter, a member of parliament, who from the first day has been very loud on this very issue. It's got to do with the member of parliament for, is it Asin Kennedy Ajipon? I always...
Asin Central.
Central. Right from the word go. His concern has got to do with the shareholding structure of the consortium. Within the 51% consortium, who determined how much should go to consortium A, B, C, D, and what actually established the reasons for which that shareholding structure was given to them. And this is where I would want all of us to narrow our conversation for us to see exactly what went into it. Because you and I know that if we have to share a number of oranges, depending on your strength and how much you're bringing on board, it determines how much you will take, how much God will take, how much Dziffa will take, how much I will take, depending on what you are bringing on board. But this is a situation where this man has been saying from the word go that not a dime has been paid by any of these individual groups. For them even to have the audacity to say that I hold a 20% share or a 50% share or let's say even a 19% share as far as the consortium is concerned. So who determined that? Neither. Who actually arrived at that structure to say that you own this, you own that, you own that? If that is the case, I think we must look at it again and see how quick government will step in to say that we will abrogate this contract and then look at it again. But issues regarding judgment debt has been raised.
Okay.
And I'm sure you have seen some reports as far as Al-Qut and the others are concerned, and what has been put out, whether indeed government will be in the position to pay judgment debt should, in case this situation gets to an international court for arbitration or something.
Gordon, is it a case of a Didija, this PDS matter?
Well, I mean, we can say that one in the streets, but not here, because I'm not sure we have any evidence to substantiate that claim. But, Sanda, I was trying to have the FTI report here. Let's look at number 17.1, okay?
But says, let us not forget that we've been told that this is not a full report. The minister said it, that this is... They are just bits and pieces.
So this is a complete report of FTI.
So what you have, is that a complete report?
Yeah, this one I have is the complete report of FTI. So what we have in the system
is a complete report of FTI, but we are waiting for the complete report of FTI.
Yes, I'm just reading this one to debunk the fact that FTI cleared PDS. It didn't clear them in its entirety. If you read 17.1, it says, based on our review of Section 8 of Al-Qut's delegation of authority, Al-Nori does not have the authority to bind Al-Qut in relation to the demand guarantee without the board's approval, which we have not seen as part of the executed PDS transaction documents. In fact, I would say the plank of this whole controversy is the what do you call the demand guarantee, whether it is valid or not. Now FTI says they've done their investigations, and then the person who signed the demand guarantee did not have the locus to sign it. So it means it is null and void, and that is what is in contention now. For me, whatever the minority in parliament are saying is in consonance with whatever the government is also saying. They both think that, they both realize that the agreement was based on some kind of insincerity or fraud. So if there's fraud, agreement based on fraud, it means it invalidates the agreement. And so therefore, the government must not be seen to be unconcerned I expect that by now, latest by tomorrow, we should have a bold statement from the government side that we have gone to Qatar, we have gone to United States. These are reports. We realize that whether due diligence was not done enough or as a result of continuous due diligence, we found out this, and so we forwarded everything to the Office of the Attorney General. But for now, PDS remains suspended, awaiting. Then we can get something. Okay. But people will just feel
but don't also forget that they have put out the information that all the commentaries on social media is not in tandem with the reports they have.
And so who
government and then FTI. So we should rather wait patiently until they put all those things together then they tell us.
You know that we are in the media space. When government does that, it goes against the government.
Gordon and Cecil, I have to suspend you as well. This is press conference on Citi TV. I am Umaru Sanda Amadu. In studio, I have Gordon Asare-Bediako of the ABC newspaper. Dziffa Ametam hosts the Breakfast Daily on Citi TV. You should catch her tomorrow at Dziffa. What time is it? 7:30 a.m. Also, Cecil Obodai hosts the Unique Morning Drive or Breakfast Drive on Unique 95.7. When we return, we'll tell you about someone else who's been fired from government. That's the National Youth Authority boss and his 2 deputies. And whether it's a good move or not. Also, we'll talk about South Africa. Stay with us and keep sending your views across. Use the hashtag press conference and tweet at me at Umaru Sanda or at Citi 973. You're welcome back to press conference, almost a Citi Newsroom. Press conference on Citi TV. I am Umaru Sanda Amadu, and I'm sitting in tonight for Duke Mensah-Opoku. He's from the BA. He's gone to the farm. He's going to harvest cassava or something. I'm not sure, but when he comes next week, you can ask him. We are discussing the big stories of the week, and I've already been discussing the issues around the PDS and the FTI report that has come, which is almost like exonerating the PDS, but government says we should wait for the Qatar report. We're waiting for that. And another big story this week, National Youth Authority boss has been fired alongside his 2 deputies by the president. Now, presidential staffer Fatia Abubakar was on Breakfast Daily this week, and she attempted to explain to us what may have happened.
We want to encourage the kind of culture that when there is a breach or when there is anything, we all do the right thing, our civic responsibility, by bringing it to the attention of the authorities that matter. And that is the kind of culture that President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has encouraged. Because since we came to office, he has invested so much into his anti-corruption campaign. And for that matter, when there is any issue at all, it is proper that an action is taken. With specific reference to this National Youth Authority issue, it was established that there was a procurement breach, meaning a contract was awarded while, according to the statements out there, it did not go through the Public Procurement Authority. You know, there is a difference between establishing a prima facie case and actually going through the actual process to come up with a conclusion. Okay. So yes, the issue is that there is a procurement breach. But now, as to the nature, the extent of the breach, and whether it can be ratified or not, we have to leave that to the technocrats to advise governments on the next move. And until then, it will be difficult to give some inconclusive information when you know that the technocrats have not come up with this report.
So there you have it. The important thing is that the bosses of the NYA have all been cleared, from the boss to the 2 deputies. Gordon, what went wrong?
What went wrong is what we read, that there was supposed to be a procurement process to have been followed, but there were breaches along the line, and the chief of staff ordered the NYA chief executive Emmanuel Asigri to resign. Then the following day, we read a press statement, or letters, not the press statement, but we read letters from the Minister of Youth and Sports ordering the 2 deputies to step aside, not necessarily stepping aside. I'm sure they had been relieved of their positions. Yes. And then in the evening, one of the deputies, Rocky Obin, Richard rather, thanks. So he called Rocky. Richard Obin posted on his Facebook wall warning that he knew something and that we were all supposed to be waiting for him. Then the following day in the morning on radio, he went to town with his version. 2 days later, one of the deputies, Kwabena Champong, popularly known as Abortion, is a friend of mine. I mean, that's his nickname. Yeah, so, and then he also wrote a long epistle saying that he had not been fairly treated because he saw himself as a whistleblower and that he wasn't given a fair hearing, so his dismissal wasn't fair, and that he warned or he cautioned Emmanuel Asigri of that particular transaction. So that's all what we heard. But for me, as a citizen, I'm worried, Sanda, because prior to 2016 elections, almost all the allegations of corruption against the John Mahama administration were based on some of these procurement breaches. And so when the President Akua assumed office, and then he said, well, he was going to establish a Minister of State in charge of procurement. I disagreed with him anyway, but I thought that fine because of what had happened. He was so much concerned and worried.
Passionate. Very
passionate about procurement processes. And so he was setting up a ministry to guide policy and all kind of things. And then when I realized that ABAJ,
the boss at the procurement,
the gatekeeper, because he established
the gates ajar.
He established the office of the procurement authority when President Akua was in power. So I said, wow, then maybe the president has really seen something. He's very much focused. So when these things start happening, I get worried. I said, so what is the president thinking? It's a worrisome situation, but I'm very happy that he's referred it to Shraj and then the office of the special prosecutor. Per what I have seen, I saw something. I chanced upon a letter somewhere last week, a letter from Shraj requesting one of the state institutions to come with a full disclosure of transactions that institution had done with the company supposedly owned by ABAJ. So I am comforted in the fact that Shraj and Office of the Special Prosecutor, they received the situation.
So you don't trust the procurement authority anymore? You don't trust the procurement ministry? You've given up?
No, I have proved further. Procurement ministry doesn't have anything to do with day-to-day running of procurement processes. What they are much concerned about are the policies, policy guidelines for procurement. Yes, for procurement, but not day-to-day running of the office of the procurement board. So they don't have anything much to do with it. But the true procurement happens at the procurement authority. So per what I have seen from the Shraj and the office of the special prosecutor, I'm very much convinced that...
You're hopeful?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that something will happen. I'm hoping that my hope will come into reality.
Okay. Dziffa, when John Mahama was president and all the allegations of corruption were made against him, there's something he repeatedly said. He repeatedly said that what he was a victim of was parody of exposure. Now, according to him, there may have been corruption in the past, but it was not exposed as much as it was done in his government, and that's what he was suffering from. Now, we are hearing now every day, and some judge said it was a one week, one day, one fraud. That's what he said, 1D, 1F. And the way the NYA issue was handled, does that give confidence to the public that the president is indeed committed to fighting corruption, or for the public, this will just be guilty as charged?
I think before we even get to the issue of corruption, we need to address the issue of communication. Right, so if the president wants us to be citizens and not spectators, the least the government can do is to openly communicate why they make the decisions they do. We were here on, was it June 6th, when the GEPA boss and her 2 deputies were asked to go home, and we were not informed why they were asked to go home. Months later, we were informed that they had some issues to do with some closet allowances. People took laptops, they didn't bring it back. These people are employees of the state. If you're going to let them go, the least you can do is let the general public know why. Even if you're going to investigate it. Right now, the only thing we have are the stories from the 2 deputies. We don't know what the CEO is saying. We don't know. We don't even know. What they're saying is something has to do with 1.8 million CDs for some training for street lights. They both did not approve of it. Somehow it went through, and they are all innocent. But what is the communication from government again? Was it corruption? Did somebody sleep on the job? Are these 2 deputies innocent?
Are they being?
And that doesn't do any justice to the problem. Because if you are silent, then I'm assuming that you might be guilty. And if you are not guilty, why are you not speaking up? Why is the CEO not speaking up? Why is the Minister of Youth and Sports also not speaking up? Because he went to Parliament to
There are people who are offended that the deputy actually went to radio to go and talk, that these things, you just shut up to save your political career.
When you shut up, it does not help with our democracy. Democracy is not only Kabinamin Kebi.
But if you talk, you are also challenging the authorities.
You're not challenging the authority.
You're damaging your future.
If you're fired from your job today, Sanda, you have every right to speak up if you think something went on wrongly and you are being tied to it.
My future boss will be watching. I'm like, oh, this guy.
The issue is your future boss should have, your boss that fired you in the first place should have informed the people who are stakeholders of your employment. These guys were being paid by taxpayers' monies. The rest of Ghana should be informed as to why they had to go. If they were doing some corrupt act there, if they did something related to procurement breaches, we deserve to know. It's not enough for us to continue speculating. It's pathetic. We talked about the PDS deal. We've heard from the side of the independent investigator. We're still waiting on government's investigation. How complicated is it to do an investigation? Now we're talking about 1 CEO and 2 deputies going home, and we now have to overly set up another committee, do investigations. Why?
The Ayawaso West Wagon report is still not out. 6 months.
Do you get me? Things should not be this complex at all. We can't boast of a democracy 25 years in, and we still don't have basic access to information as to why a CEO and a deputy had to go home. It's simple. Let us know so that we don't have to speculate. First deputy came out and said, I didn't approve of 1.8 million cities. I didn't agree. Another one has come out to say, I was a whistleblower and I deserve some protection. Why is the CEO not speaking?
You expect to hear from them. Cecil, is that something you also think, or do you just keep quiet and fix their mess?
Well, I think the law governing procurement in Ghana is a public procurement law, 2003 Act 663. And if you go to sections 92, it clearly spells out the offenses and what people must be made to go through when they breach the very basic regulations as far as rules are concerned. But to follow up on what Dziffa and Godwin have said, is that what we have seen? I don't think that is. And I would quickly make reference to the Auditor General's report that has come out year in, year out. And in that report, we have seen all the infractions, the embezzlements, the malfeasance, procurement breaches. And we have seen how the very people who have committed these crimes, in quotes, have either walked away freely or are still living with us and they're breathing free air, when in actual fact they're supposed to pay for the crimes they have committed. But that is not the situation. You see, I don't want to get into what the 2 deputies have said and whether the minister was aware and whether one of them was before the audit committee and the presentations he made and all that. But I think that as a country, once we have recognized the importance of integrity as a key factor for good governance and for which we have trust for public institutions, we must begin to now underline certain things. We must have a national integrity standards so that all of us will follow for public officials. But this is where the problem is, and I will want to underline that. Most often than not, when there's change of government, we have seen political appointees taking up positions which would have been given to civil servants and public servants. And some of them, would you blame them? They are not too familiar with some of these things. So they commit some of these things, these very things we're talking about. And that is not to say that the civil servants and the public servants are not doing it. Because year in, year out in the Auditor General's report, we have also seen MMDCs, MMDAs, and all the civil servants and public, some of them who have actually committed crimes towards the state, worked freely. But that is not to say that, well, it does not happen. But almost all of these appointments we are talking about are political appointments. You understand? And why you mentioned all of them, all the state agencies, immediately there's change of, whether it's MDC or MPP, we bring in political, appointees.
So we don't have state appointees, we have political
exactly
appointees.
And so we should know that these things, but you see, for me, I would want to look at it from this point, that over the period we have violated the very basic principles as far as the ethics, the principles and regulations are concerned, as far as procurement processes are in there. Transparency. What again do you want to talk about? Accountability. Even due diligence, the word we have always heard, due diligence, has that been used? Or has that been? No. It only occurs and then we come around and then we start talking about due diligence. You understand? These things for me, I think, are very, very, very critical. Upholding the ethical standards, which for me is the cornerstone for fairness, transparency, and all that. Do we have these things in our public institutions? No. So the point is that we as citizens must begin to speak and ask questions about the accountability structures that we will have to put in place to make sure that people like Asigri and his colleagues and co will not have the leeway to take decisions beyond what the policy or the law states.
Very well. Okay. This is the press conference on Citi TV. My name is Umaru Sanda Amadu here with Cecil. We just heard him, Cecil Obodai with Unique FM, Dziffa, Akua, Ametam with Citi TV, and Gordon Asare-Bediako with ABC News, and several other media houses, including Oman FM. We'll be back and then we'll talk about South Africa. Don't go away. You're welcome back to press conference. Some of your comments now. Eko Kwanzi says, Umaru, let's not forget that this whole PDS saga was triggered when the independent power distribution company said they've not received a dime from the PDS since they took over. Let's find out if they've been paid. Soso sends a tweet and he says, anytime you listen to the Ghanaian politician and their associates, you could tell they are sick and lost upon all the high degrees that have acquired, and it's pathetic. Child, I don't even know what you've just said. Ranzris says, I don't understand Ghana government. Anything a committee is to be set up, investigate an issue. We don't hear the result at the end. The reports end in the big man's pocket. We, the ordinary Ghanaians, also deserve to hear the report. You can also send your tweets. The hashtag is press conference. Alternatively, you can go on WhatsApp platforms and send us messages like Prince has done from Kofrido, Prince Henry. And he says, please, I want the sports minister to come clear on the sacking of the CEO and the 2 deputies of NYA, because one of the deputies saying the sports minister is aware of the alleged corruption at the NYA. Ralph Aye from Newbury says, let our politicians know that procurement is a means to achieve an end, not a conduit for corruption. This one from Stephen in Kintambo, he says, I think suspension and firing are not enough. Prosecution must follow. Like the usual trend, they will be cleared. JM Beba, that's the hashtag this person has sent. Okay, Bobby from Y says, Umaru, the common thing that runs through the FTI report and the government report led by its is that PDS didn't have the financial maximum, which was a condition precedent. The government should just do the needful by abrogating the contract. Koshi Badohu Denu is sending this from Denu. He says, governance is assuming a comic posture. Government officials, including the president, alleged fraud in the PDS agreement, suspended the agreement and instituted a probe. A week later, the suspension was reversed. At the time, the president was in Angola defending the suspension. A month later, PDS is as usual cleared of all charges leveled against it by government. What then was the basis for the fraud allegations by the government? In any case, I think it is a good corporate practice for PDS to acquire a stake in ECG without a cedi only to pay ECG for each stick with ECG money. Well, keep your comments coming through and read them for you. Let's go to South Africa now. And it is recurring, and it is back in the news. Let me start this time with Dziffa. How are you receiving the news from South Africa about this xenophobic or Afrophobic attack, as some people want to call it?
I think it's sad, it's shameful, but also I'm not surprised, unfortunately. South Africa is a country that has gone through a lot of trauma since the apartheid days. And we need to understand that Ghana, we can boast of at least 62 years of independence. South Africa cannot do the same. And Nkrumah said something that was so profound that you cannot necessarily focus on political freedom alone without focusing on the economics. So you give someone freedom, you say, okay, you have your political freedom, you can vote, but you don't have access to quality education, you don't have access to a good paying job, you don't have access to even something as simple as high quality historical books to understand where you've come from, what you've been through, why you are going through the things that you are going through. Because somebody can be physically poor, but if they have clarity on where they've been, where they are now, and the prospects of changing their current situation, it's completely transformative. But if people don't even have an idea of their own sense of identity, inferiority complex will set in, which is exactly what's going on in South Africa. They see other people who don't have the same skin color as them, oppressing them, taking advantage of opportunities that they should have, but somehow your inferiority complex tells you that perhaps it's reserved for these kinds of people. Let me look at the guy who looks just like me. Why is he doing better than me? Why is he taking the opportunities that I deserve? And let me fight for the breadcrumbs that he has, as opposed to asking, I actually have every right to have that loaf of bread. And for me, it saddens me because we've come through a generation of Pan-Africanism, the African identity, civil rights movement, the global black people fighting together to say, I am my brother's keeper. We can do this on our own. To setting people on fire in 2019, and in Ghana, we're talking about the year of return. The diaspora should be coming back. We can't even boast of our freedoms as Ghanaians if one country on this continent is so backward that they would actually threaten to steal someone's right to life because they are threatened. And they are threatened by their own insecurities caused by their inferiority complex.
But people hold a view, and the analysts who watch South Africa, and they'll say that South Africa is not really truly black.
How so?
Because the economic power still resides in the whites, the hands of the white people who control the political power, which is in the hands of the black. So technically, South Africa is not truly independent, some people would say.
That's what I was saying with the analogy I made with political freedom without economic freedom. You are technically still enslaved. But it's even sad when you don't even know that you are enslaved. If you physically put chains on me right now, everyone can tell that I'm enslaved. I'm physically not able to move. Now, if you remove those chains, but you don't give me the resources to actually be enlightened enough to see that I'm human, I deserve all the freedoms you and your children have. If you keep me in that slavery mentality, I'll see every other black person as a house slave, and I'm a field slave, and I deserve to be in the house just as they do, as opposed to saying, none of us should be enslaved.
Okay.
So for me, we need to start looking at how South Africa is treating its people. If you are not giving them the same opportunities that other races have, that's what you're going to get. And we are all going to be at the receiving end of it.
Let me bring in Cecil. Cecil, South Africa is not the only country with economic challenges.
Yes.
Why are no citizens in any of these countries raising arms against their brothers? Why is it happening only in South Africa?
You know, Umaru, there's something that I have to make very clear here. I want to look at it from the population perspective. South Africa has a population of 58 million people. 25% of their population live below the extreme poverty line. GDP per capita is about 7,600. All these indicators play a significant role. Cast your minds back in 1976, specifically on the 16th of June, the youth hit the streets.
In which country? South Africa?
In South Africa, in what they call an uprising, and specifically in Soweto. Within a space of time, it had taken over all the provinces in South Africa. What were they protesting against? An educational system that they thought was set up for failure for them, the blacks, because they were going to study in Afrikaans, and they thought that it was going to put them behind the progress as far as the speed of the world.
It's limiting them.
Is concerned, and that was it was not shut down, but it was accepted. The reasons for which today, on that very day, that day has been observed as a public holiday from that day till today. But what has happened after that? That should tell you something. And what Dziffa was saying points that fact that, you see, our educational system, not only in South Africa, but on the continent of Africa, has not placed us fit into the world of work. And so you have a lot of their graduates churned out, and they cannot find jobs to do. It's not only in South Africa, even in Ghana, in the rest of the African countries. That is the problem. The world is looking at artificial intelligence, ICT, and all other kinds of things, so that our grammar-focused education is not what we need now. But that's what they have not addressed. Secondly, you see, I talked about the GDP per capita, and I spoke about the population in terms, those who fall under extreme poverty. These are not poor people who cannot read and write. They are poor people who can read and write.
So educated poor people.
Educated poor people. What do you think is the problem? That's what the thing is. But you see, unfortunately, we are hearing all kinds of commentaries coming from diplomatic circles as to why other African countries have moved in. That is not the problem. They are unable to solve their challenges for which they think that you and I and other citizens have moved in there, and they are creating problems for them. Okay. That, for me, is not the problem, and that has to be addressed.
Okay. Gordon, how should African governments be reacting to South Africa?
I think it's happened one too many, okay, and so they must tell them as it is. The dynamics Cecil just raised, they are not peculiar to South Africa alone. I mean, Ghana, we once had association of unemployed graduates.
UGAG.
Yes, I mean 80,000 graduates are churned out every year. How many of these graduates are able to get jobs? But we don't take clubs and then go about hitting foreigners because they are Nigerians or Nigerians. Are you a Nigerian? Okay. Or whatever.
You're asking Dziffa, right?
So Sanda, what the South Africans are doing, I agree with my sister here. They need a second independence, okay? They need economic independence. What they've done now is misplaced aggression. The wealth of South Africa is in the hands of the white minority in the country. My brother just gave out some statistics. Out of 58 million South Africans, out of 58 million people live in South Africa, 4 million are foreigners. And they are controlling the wealth. And so you think you have about 800,000 Nigerians and you are fighting them. I read something about Thabo Mbeki, and I was so much disappointed in him.
Their former president.
Former president. Thabo Mbeki is a well-read man. I respect him a lot. But how can you tell me that in South Africa you don't sell cigarettes, you don't sell cigarettes in sticks, but you sell cigarettes in boxes? But when Nigerians come to South Africa, they sell cigarettes, 1 stick, 2 sticks, 3 sticks, and then the poor person who thinks he cannot afford a box of cigarettes,
a packet of cigarettes,
a packet of cigarettes, will buy from the Nigerians who sell through sticks. And I said, which trade regulation in South Africa prohibits that?
Are we not being hypocritical? Our traders here were fighting the Nigerians recently.
Good.
It was even bloody at a point.
Right.
We didn't say anything.
Yes.
Why are we condemning South Africa?
No.
Xenophobia is in Ghana.
No, wait. I'm very glad that you brought this matter up. If anything had happened, I would have blamed government. If anything had happened, I would have blamed government, because what Guta was saying, they were not saying Nigerians or foreigners should not trade in Ghana. They said they should not do retail as stipulated in our laws.
By law, yes.
And so if the government fails to enforce a regulation, and then citizens are forced to enforce the regulation, certainly there will be breaches. And so the government must be seen to be in control of all these things. Whatever is happening in South Africa, the South African government is complicit. It must be held accountable for that.
And Sanda, if you remember, even in the Swami magazine issue, Ghana police came in to protect the Nigerians.
Exactly.
Yes,
there are lots of politicians who spoke up against it. Even Carlos Ahenkwan, who's the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry, spoke up against it. There's something about your leaders putting their foot down, because these guys are acting like terrorists.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
and the government should set up and say we're not going to have terrorism in our country.
Okay. Dziffa, there's something that we also need to get before quickly we wrap up. It's got to do with cost of borrowing. Our Ghanaian friends and brothers are complaining because they think that the Nigerians are selling way below what they're supposed to. But you see, they have borrowed from a different jurisdiction at a cost far lesser than what our
Ghanaian
interest rates
are better in Nigeria.
So obviously they will not bring
Is it that they are just being too adventurous? I have been told by
so they are moving around. It's the same way they are going to South Africa, they are going to other places because the cost of borrowing is cheaper for them.
That instead of waiting in their shops in Abosokan, they have motorbikes and they carry spare parts to mechanics in their shops.
That's being created.
It's a fundamental economic problem that has to be solved by the managers of our economy.
It's a fundamental time to close my show. This is a press conference for the week. My guest in studio tonight, Fahad Cecil Wintum Obodai from Unique FM. He hosts the Unique Breakfast Drive. To his right is Dziffa Akua Ametam, also hosts the Breakfast Daily Show on Citi TV. And to her right is Gordon Asare-Bediako, who edits a newspaper called ABC News. And to his right is myself, Umaru Sanda Amadu. I sat in for Duke Mensah Opoku. Stay with Citi TV. Press conference returns next Sunday. Thank you.